What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Today we're going to be talking about the difference between VTI and VOO, otherwise known as VOO, and discuss which one might be a better option for you as an investor. Now, both VTI and VOO are ETFs, which if you're unfamiliar with what ETFs are basically stocks that hold a bunch of other stocks within them. So you can kind of think of them as like a condensed stock, with just a bunch of stocks within a stock. That being said, let's go ahead and dive on in. Let's first start off with the difference between VOO and VTI. Let's start with VTI. VTI is a total US stock market fund. And basically what that means is that it seeks to replicate the entire US stock market. VTI holds over 3,500 public US companies, ranging all the way from large public companies to small public companies. If we break down VTI a little bit more, roughly 82% of the stocks within VTI are large cap companies, 12% are mid cap companies, and roughly 6% are small cap companies. So although VTI tries to get a mix of the entire US stock market, it definitely leans heavily towards the larger cap, larger, most valuable public companies. VTI also has an expense ratio of 0.03% per year, which is definitely on the much lower side when it comes to expense ratios for managed funds. If we broke down that expense ratio, it basically means every $100 you're investing into that fund, you'd be paying roughly 3 pennies per year to cover the administration fees and just the overall operation of that fund. Now let's jump over to VOO, VOO. VOO is an S&P 500 ETF. The goal of VOO is to track the S&P 500 index and essentially mirror the price movements in the index. If you're not familiar with the S&P 500 index, the S&P 500 is the top 500 most valuable US public companies in the stock market, otherwise known as large cap companies. So although VTI, like we just talked about, definitely holds a large portion of large cap companies just like VOO, VOO specifically only holds large cap companies that are more or less stable and have been around for a while and kind of stood the test of time and have proven themselves in the stock market. Like VTI, VOO also has a 0.03% expense ratio, meaning for every $100 you invest into VOO, you would be paying 3 pennies as an expense ratio per year. If you're not super familiar with expense ratios, that is taken out automatically, so you'll likely never even notice it. They just take it out of the fund, and you're not gonna have to like pay anybody, or you don't get like an invoice or anything. They take it out automatically and you'll likely never notice it. It's very small amount. If you were gonna have like a financial advisor invest on your behalf, many of the times they charge anywhere from 1% to 2% just as a fee, or you can think of it as an expense ratio just to manage your money. So paying 0.03% is nothing, and it's also nice because it's all passively invested, so you basically just throw your money into the fund and the fund is taking care of itself all automatically. Okay, so now that we know what VOO and VTI are, let's go ahead and talk about the historic performance. So historically, both of these funds have performed nearly identically. Over the past 5 years, VTI has had a slight advantage over VOO, but nonetheless, the performance has been pretty nearly identical. Over the past 5 years, VTI has earned an average of 17.51% per year, to whereas VOO has returned an average of 17.43% per year. So yes, historically, VTI has outperformed VOO very, very slightly, but nonetheless, the returns are very, very similar, and no matter which fund you invested in the past, you would have done just fine. A simpler way to kind of explain the two is that VTI, you can think of, VTI basically holds all the stocks VOO holds, but it also adds some additional exposure to smaller public companies. And the big reason of why VTI might have slightly outperformed VOO in the past is because it has had exposure to smaller public companies that have gone on to grow a lot more, and with that growth, return a little bit more. That being said, in the short term, VTI has been slightly more volatile. Again, these funds have basically performed nearly identically, so the differences are very, very small, but nonetheless, VTI does have that slight historic advantage. That being said, past performance never guarantees future performance, so we can't guarantee that VTI will continue to have a slight advantage. But I think it's safe to say, since both funds do very much sway into the large public company area, that they will likely perform pretty identically in the future as they have in the past. One or the other may have a slight advantage in the future, but I think nonetheless they'll both perform pretty identically. And then just to kind of add, the top 10 stocks in both of the funds make up over 20% of both funds themselves, meaning that both of these funds are heavily weighted in these 10 stocks. So the reason you watch this video is probably asking yourself, which one should I invest in? Should I invest in VTI or should I invest in VOO? And my whole philosophy around this is that if you're looking to invest in the US market as a whole, either of the funds will work. But if you want some additional exposure to like smaller public companies and maybe a little bit slightly more growth, then VTI would likely be a better fund. However, if you're looking for a little bit more stable fund that has concentrated exposure to just the large public companies that have stood the test of time, then VOO would likely be ideal for you. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments. What do you prefer? Are you a VTI fan or are you a VOO fan? Do you like both? Let me know in the comments. It's always nice to hear from everybody. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any feedback on how I can make these videos better, feel free to shoot me a message. It's always nice to hear from people who watch my content, and have a great rest of your day.